You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and let's get caught up on the gunfight, the prison escape, the double murder, and the capture of two suspects in Idaho that all happened over a 72-hour period. Okay, let's go back to where the two suspects met and the crimes they previously committed. For 3 years, 31-year-old Skylar Mead and 28-year-old Nicholas Umfenauer were housed in the Idaho Maximum Security Prison together. Mead had been in prison since 2016 for charges that included aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer with a firearm enhancement because he shot at a Twin Falls, Idaho sheriff's sergeant during a high-speed car chase. And it seems he was fleeing a traffic stop when he crashed the car and then the shooting occurred. He has also been convicted of felony possession of a controlled substance, grand theft, and introduction of contraband into a correction facility. So this guy's got some dirty deeds behind him. But what about Nicholas Umfenauer? Well, he was incarcerated for grand theft and unlawful possession of a weapon by a convicted felon. His prison sentence was supposed to last for 5 years, but he was released early without completing the full 5 years. Now, while incarcerated, the two of them together joined the Aryan Knights gang, which seems to have formed in the Idaho prison system in the mid-1990s. Prosecutors in Idaho call this gang a hate-fueled group that engages in criminal activity behind bars, and they use intimidation, addiction, and violence to achieve their goals in prison life. They've been described as white supremacists, and these groups aren't just one or two guys. The ADL Center on Extremism estimates that between 100 and 150 members of the Aryan Knights exist in the Idaho, Oregon, and Washington prison system. And just because this specific gang exists in these three states doesn't mean the problem isn't in other states. The ADL says 75 different white supremacist gangs are found in prisons in 38 states. All right, this gang also transformed Mead. When he first entered the prison system, he had no face tattoos and was pretty much a quiet and respectful prisoner. This, at least according to Stan Holloway, who prosecuted Mead in Twin Falls when he had his initial brushes with the law. So Stan even went as far as describing Mead as a bright individual. But after he was convicted for the shooting of the law enforcement officer, his appearance and his behavior took a drastic change. He has the numbers 1 and 11 tattooed under each eye. Okay, this represents the letter A being the first letter of the alphabet, or the number 1, and then K being the 11th number of the alphabet. And of course, A and K stand for Aryan Knights. The letters A and K are also tattooed on his stomach. And Holloway, who is part Japanese, also said that he has, in his time as a prosecutor, been called names due to racism. But he said back then, Mead was never anything but polite to him. But Stan Holloway also admits that prison can change a man. Now, while Mead and Umfenauer were incarcerated, they seemed to hatch this plan that played out last week at a Boise hospital. Okay, remember, Umfenauer had been released from prison a little bit early, and that was about a month ago before this Tuesday afternoon of last week, when Mead, while in prison, physically abused himself. On that Tuesday, he pretty much beat himself up. He had a large gash on his cheek and then other injuries to his body, which led prison officials to transfer Mead to St. Alphonsus Hospital in downtown Boise at about 9:30 that night. At the hospital, he was treated, and as law enforcement was preparing to return Mead to the prison at about 2:15 a.m. that Wednesday morning, Umfenauer was armed and waiting in the ambulance bay. He launched an attack against the officers, wounding 2. Unfortunately, in the confusion, a third officer was wounded by friendly fire. And I'll rest your minds right now. All of the officers survived the attack and will recover from their wounds. But others do not in this planned escape. Now, despite being shackled, Mead is able to break free from the officers and jump into the waiting 2020 gray Honda Civic being driven by Umfenauer. And then the duo fled, unobstructed. And that's when this manhunt began. Now, y'all know I'm from Idaho, except this is the other side of the state. I'm close to Utah, and Boise is close to Oregon. A quick side note here, I saw a TikTok the other day that was floating a conspiracy theory that Idaho doesn't really exist. Okay, I promise you guys I'm real. And haven't we displayed enough crime in Idaho since 2019 to prove we're real? I mean, regrettably, Idaho has brought you Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and also the 4 co-eds that were murdered at the University of Idaho. We're real, and we clearly have crime that includes these 2 fugitives that were on the run on Wednesday. Okay, I was sure that the 2 would head to where they have resources, which possibly meant Twin Falls. That's located about 2 hours away from Boise. And that's what they did, but they didn't do it violence-free, and they didn't take the direct route to Twin Falls. They headed north about 7 hours instead of east, and along the way, the 2 allegedly killed 2 different older gentlemen, and the reasons are still a little bit murky. They encountered 83-year-old James Mowney in the small town of Julietta. Now, James was out walking his dogs, a white Jack Russell Terrier and a brown Chesapeake Bay Retriever. And this was on Wednesday when the suspects allegedly killed James and stole his 2019 Chrysler Pacifica. James was found murdered near the abandoned Getaway Honda Civic. The Nez Perce County coroner has yet to release how James was killed, but the 2 were armed at the time, so possibly a gunshot wound is my belief. Then, as Meade and Umfenauer traveled across northern Idaho, they seemed to purposely search out another older gentleman. 72-year-old Gerald Don Henderson was found dead near his secluded cabin in Orofino when a concerned loved one requested a welfare check on him. Now, that loved one was Don's partner in life, Ron Thompson. Ron told the AP that he and Don had met Umfenauer about 10 years ago. This all happened through a neighbor kid that Umfenauer was friends with. Now, Umfenauer was in his late teens at this time, and he was having difficulty with his father. So Ron and Don offered for him to stay at the cabin with the 2. The month-long stay was frightening, according to Ron. He said Umfenauer would often talk about shooting people. And eventually, they forced Umfenauer to leave the cabin and to live elsewhere. But the deadly run-in with Umfenauer and Don was not the first time that Don had seen Umfenauer since he had been freshly released from prison. See, about a month ago, right after Umfenauer got out of prison, Ron says that he trudged through the deep snow to spend about an hour chatting with Don over coffee. Ron said that Don felt very uneasy about the unexpected visit. We now know his senses were correct. Near his dead body, police found the dogs alive that belonged to James, and then also a pair of shackles that are now believed to be the pair Meade was wearing as he exited the Boise hospital. And just like in the case of our first murdered man, James, the Clearwater County coroner has ruled Don's death a homicide, but his manner of death was not released. Now, the dogs have been safely returned to the wife of James Mowney. So both of these men, they died on Wednesday, and the suspects are covering some serious ground because they now need to head south through some dense and beautiful wilderness in central Idaho. And somewhere, it isn't yet clear, the 2 were joined by a third person named Tanya Huber. So on Thursday afternoon, law enforcement engaged Tanya, Umfenauer, and Meade in a car chase near Twin Falls. The 3 were still driving the stolen Chrysler Pacifica, and it seems there was another car involved, presumably Tanya's, and not many details have been released about how they found the trio at the Twin Falls home and then how the short car chase went down. But we do know that no gunfire was exchanged, and all 3 were taken into custody without extensive use of force. Law enforcement has indicated the 2 will be charged with the murders of James and Don, and also the attempted murders of the correctional employees. So what about Tanya? Well, that woman who joined them, she has been charged with eluding authorities and possession of a controlled substance. Her bail was set very high at $500,000 after the judge learned that Tanya drove at speeds of over 100 miles per hour through residential neighborhoods during the car chase. All right, these charges for Tanya, they're kind of making me believe she was not with the two suspects while they were allegedly committing the murders in northern Idaho, but instead was someone they met up with in Twin Falls. Okay, you guys, I'm not sure I'll have much of an update for you in this case going forward. These two men are most likely going away for life, but I will watch the case. And instead, you guys, I want to focus on the positives here in this saga that was filled with senseless death and violence. The two men, after their deadly turn through northern Idaho, have been caught without additional death in Twin Falls, so that's good. And the two dogs were found safe and returned to their home, so that's good. And the 3 correctional officers will all make a recovery. All right, I have some updates to the Ruby Franke 8 passengers child abuse charges. We've followed along with this case in multiple updates through Rise in Crime. And the last update that I brought you was that Jodi Hildebrant and Ruby Franke had both pled guilty to 4 counts of child endangerment. They've been incarcerated since their arrest back in August, and last month they were each sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison for the 4 individual child abuse charges. Well, on Friday, interrogation interviews and Ring doorbell footage and additional details were all released in the case. And here's where I offer a warning that some of what is going to be said or shown today is graphic. Mostly right near the end of the update, when I read journal entries of Ruby's. I just wanted to tell you guys that it's a little hard to listen to. So maybe when you get to those journal entries, you might want to skip forward. Now, the details are graphic and disturbing, but they are also a glimpse into the state of reality that Jodi, Ruby, and Ruby's husband, Kevin, were living in. Okay, here's the quick reminder, the background of the story. Ruby and Kevin Franke operated the YouTube channel 8 Passengers, which chronicled their parenting of 6 children. The popular and quite honestly, financially lucrative channel began taking heat in about 2017 to 2018 when Ruby and Kevin's teenage son released a video stating he had been sleeping on a beanbag for the last 9 months because his parents had taken away his room and bed as a punishment because they felt he was treating his younger brother inappropriately. Now, more disturbing parenting styles came to light, and Ruby just eventually stopped making content for the page. And then YouTube shut the channel down because of the controversy. Now, during this time, Ruby and Kevin had begun using Utah-based therapist Jodi Hildebrant to counsel their teenage son via Zoom, and then to also begin counseling the couple with their marriage difficulties. This led to Jodi moving into the couple's Springville, Utah home so that the counseling could be more effective. And then that progressed to Kevin just actually leaving the home and severely limiting his interactions with his 6 children and Ruby. Jodi went back to her home in southern Utah, and Ruby and Jodi went on to start a new YouTube channel called Connections, where they would offer parenting and relationship advice in weekly episodes. Well, last summer, following what we know to be months of torture, Ruby's youngest son escaped Jodi Hildebrant's home in southern Utah and unsteadily walked to a neighbor's home to ask for food. When that neighbor called 911, the emaciated 12-year-old led law enforcement to Jodi's home, where Ruby's daughter was found malnourished and hiding in a closet. On Friday, the Ring doorbell footage was released from the home where the boy asked for help. Now, I'm going to play some of that footage for you here.
Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could do 2 favors.
Well, what are they?
Taking me to the nearest police station. Well, actually, just one's fine.
Well, what's going on, son? Have a seat there.
It's personal business.
Have a seat. What's your name? I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's says he just came from a neighbor's house. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. He's hungry and he's thirsty.
Need someone immediately.
But he has duct tape around
And big
his ankle.
injuries. There's sores around them.
Yeah, there's sores around him. I think the good chance he's been...
He also has...
Oh, and he has been around his ankle.
As well.
I mean, his wrist as well. Okay, this boy has been...
Needs immediate attention. Oh, he was such a good kid.
This kid has obviously been... I think he's been... so he escaped.
We need the police here now.
They're on their way.
These are some I gave
These folks are going to examine you.
How did you get the ropes on you? Who did them? You're not in trouble with me, okay? We're just trying to figure out what's going on. Our main focus right now is you, okay? Who put the ropes on you? Supposed to help you what?
Okay, that footage was short, and you see him unsteadily walking to the door, ringing the doorbell, and then walking away thinking no one would answer. But the angel neighbor does come out and speak with the boy, and then he eventually calls 911. Now, if you couldn't quite hear, the boy who has duct tape around his bony ankles and wrists asked the older gentleman if he could do him a favor. And the neighbor responds by saying, well, what are they? Meaning, what are the favors? And the boy asks if he could get him in touch with the nearest police station. Now the angel neighbor asks the boy to have a seat on the porch and then asks him what is going on. The child says, it's personal business. Okay, this for me is so reflective of the grooming that had been done to this child. We know via court documents that he had been told repeatedly that he deserved the punishments he was receiving and that God knew he was a bad boy and that he deserved to be tied up and duct taped. Those documents also revealed that he felt he deserved to work in the hot desert sun with no water or shoes. Well, the neighbor does provide the child with food and water, and as they sit on the porch, they're waiting for law enforcement to arrive. Then another video was released with the boy showing him lying in an ambulance as officers are trying to ask him questions about who was tying the child up. Now, I would have played that one for you, but so much of the audio is redacted, so I'll just explain to you what's going on. The officer tells the child he's not in trouble, and it's okay to answer, but the boy is clearly hesitant to reveal who has harmed him. When EMS removed the duct tape, they found deep cuts on the boy's ankles and wrists. The boy did answer officials when they asked him how long the duct tape had been on the wrists and ankles. He goes on to say it had been on his body since the previous night when he was told that the duct tape would help the cuts heal. And then as the child became a little bit more comfortable with authorities, he did reveal to authorities that the wounds came because he had been tied with ropes and that the reason he was tied to the ground was to help the choices he had made. Again, he says help. He had been groomed to understand that his punishments were helping him, that it was all a good thing. He then told EMS that the open wounds had been treated with honey and cayenne pepper. Now, during this time in the ambulance, officers do delay for a bit entering into Jodi's home. They're trying to decide how to protect any of the other children that might be in Jodi Hildebrant's place. And to paint a picture for you, Jodi's home is not directly adjacent to the neighbor's home where the boy was being treated by EMS. These are large, expensive homes that have distance between them. So it's not like if you're that neighbor and the ambulance is out front of your house that Jodi's going to be able to directly see that ambulance next door. There is distance between them. Well, eventually, police decide to just knock on the door of the home and they push past Jodi to retrieve the other child. They find her sitting on the floor of a completely empty walk-in closet. And I thought this was weird. Maybe it means nothing to you guys. But in the video, you see the bathroom is like cluttered. There's stuff all over the vanity. But right directly behind the vanity is an empty walk-in closet. It's weird who's living where and what's going on. Anyway, just notice that. Okay, I'm going to play this 2-minute video for you of an interaction between the child that was found in the closet and the officer that was trying to help the child.
You come in, my buddy. I'm a police officer. Are you going to the union here? Hey, you okay? Is it just you in here? I'm Sergeant Tobler. What's your name? I just have one. Where's your sister at? Contact one. You okay? Huh? You doing okay? You don't want to talk to me? Yeah, that's okay. Can you come with me though? We got Jodi out here. You know Jodi? She's outside with us. You take your time, bud. I'm in no hurry. I'm a police officer. Did you know that? I don't mean to hurt you at all. You doing okay? Are you scared? Yeah? You're okay. Do you need help? You want to come with me? No? I'm not going to hurt you. Promise. See this right here? It's a badge. It tells me I don't hurt people. I'm just here to make sure you're okay. You're in no way in any trouble. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're okay. And I get you if you're scared. I would be too. Okay? You want to come with me?
As you were watching or listening, it's not just bad audio quality as to why you can't hear the child. She remains completely still and silent, sitting crisscross applesauce, like legs crossed over, on the floor of this walk-in closet. It's a hardwood floor, and she just sits there still while the officer tries to talk with her. Okay, we later learn after this body cam footage that the officer let the child just stay there. He's not wanting to force her or continue abusing her any more than she's already been abused. How they handle it is they have an EMT come in and try to speak with her, and she doesn't respond or try to leave the closet even after that. So then officers brought a meal of pizza and a soda to try to make her more comfortable. The little girl doesn't touch the food or drink for several minutes. It actually takes a total of 4 hours before the child agrees to leave the safety of the closet. The mental and physical abuse that must have been previously rendered for a child who's hungry to sit on the hardwood floor of an empty closet when all of us listening are thinking, this is your clear path to safety, get out. This poor, sweet girl. Now, both kids were taken to a local hospital and treated with IV therapy and other medical care in order to address their malnutrition and dehydration, and also some of the physical wounds that they were suffering. Now, police then go on to conduct 3 interviews, one with Jodi, one with Ruby, and one with Kevin, who wasn't even in the city. So let's just start with Kevin because it's the longest and it's the most, kind of confusing and strange for me. The entire video is 45 minutes long. Now, not all 45 minutes are of Kevin and investigators talking. They choose to leave him in the room alone for several minutes. I think because they're trying to see how he would react to the devastating news of the children's abuse. But that's just me guessing. However, some weird things do occur. First off, in this interview with Kevin, he refuses to tell police how he even knew to drive from Springville to St. George, Utah to pick up his children. That's about a 3-hour drive, you guys. Like it was a commitment to get in the car and come to St. George. Now, law enforcement does not believe that he has been contacted by anyone in authority, and Kevin will not tell how he found out his children needed picked up from the police station. Okay, remember, they're not at the police station. But that's what Kevin thinks. Now, I'll come back to that one in a second. Here's another weird thing. He is so calm, almost emotionless. He talks with the investigators for several minutes about why his marriage failed, what kind of women are Jodi and his wife Ruby, which he's very complimentary of them, how he has had no contact with his children for a year, and that he has only spoken or texted Ruby 3 times over that previous year. He believes she has his kids. He hasn't talked to his kids, and he has only had contact with her 3 times over the last year. Okay, all of this conversation happens before Kevin even finds out what is up with his children. I think that's the question I would have been asking repeatedly if I was Kevin. Like, where are my kids? But he doesn't ask. Okay, maybe it was a respecting authority thing. It could be that. Or maybe it was he didn't quite understand the gravity of the situation thing. Or maybe it's just, if you haven't seen your 6 kids for more than a year, you just become a little bit disconnected in order to heal. I'm not sure, but it is strange. As I listened, he only clearly asks once about the children, but he does spend several minutes of the interview talking about how he has been trying to heal himself and that he was a major portion of the blame for his failed marriage. Okay, I'm going to play for you the portion where the male detective finally breaks the news to him that he isn't taking his kids home that evening.
And Jodi saw the need for me to get help. And frankly, I agree. The space has been exactly what I need to face, my own addictions and receive the support and help that I've needed. And so this space has been very, very good for me.
Mm-hmm. So when you stated that you and Ruby had this no contact that you guys just verbally agreed upon, was that an idea given by Jodi that she recommended you guys have that space and not contact one another?
I'm not aware of that. The invitation for me to leave and take space was from my wife.
Okay.
But that was while Jodi and Ruby were friends and collaborating and doing podcasts and
Sure.
Well, you're the custodial parent of these children. I don't see why we can't explain to you why we're involved. So I don't recall the exact time, but sometime before 11 o'clock today, we received a phone call from 911 on our dispatch that a 12 to 13-year-old boy was knocking on doors in a neighborhood asking for food and water, that he was severely emaciated, that he had...
What does emaciated mean?
Skinny, scrawny, malnutrition, not enough food, not enough water to sustain life. So he had...
I'm sorry, what?
He had duct tape on his extremities, on his hands, on his ankles, and those were covering rope burns that were used to tie him down. Take a second and think about what I just said. That's the condition of your son. Given that information, your son was taken to the hospital. A warrant has been applied and granted by the Department of Child and Family Services to remove both from your wife's care. So no one right now is going to have access to these 2 children based on their physical condition. Do you understand that?
I understand.
Would you condone that behavior?
Would I condone that behavior?
That's my job. My job is to find out your knowledge of the treatment of these
based on your
precious
description,
children.
no. But again, I don't know the details or I don't know what's going on. But as you described that sounds horrible,
Disgusting. No human being should be treated like that.
Okay.
That's my thoughts, but again, we might be different on that.
Now it seems Kevin doesn't even realize they are hospitalized with physical and emotional wounds. And for me, he is obviously blindsided by the information, and he's now realizing he kind of needs to get his affairs in order and start caring for his kids long term. Some of you might feel differently about that. If you watched it and you think differently, I totally get it. I would love to hear what you think. I could understand if someone interprets his lack of emotion as lack of even acknowledgement of the situation. You guys just decide, but I do think it was a bizarre interview. Okay, let's kick back to the whomever let him know he needed to come get his kids. Whatever that flow of information was, it was very limited. Is he just possibly doing what Jodi told him to do? Did she send him a vague text and he just jumped and headed to southern Utah? In the interview, Kevin states no legal paperwork has been drawn up in the separation, and he admits he has willingly done as Ruby has asked and stayed completely away from her and the kids. He basically says his job was to provide income for Ruby and the children. Now, law enforcement determines in the interview that Kevin is not involved in the abuse, and they let him leave on his own free will. But he is made aware that he will not have contact with the kids for 72 hours at a minimum, since they are now legally in the care of Child Protective Services. Now, I said I started with Kevin because his interview was so bizarre for me, but that doesn't mean Ruby's wasn't bizarre as well. I'm not even going to play it for you guys because there's really no use. She blankly stares, and I mean blankly and vacant, at the interviewer. She kind of just blinks slowly 2 or 3 times each time a question is asked. And then she, just after a few short minutes, requests her lawyer and the interview ends. And then to Jodi's interview, which seems, I don't even know how to describe it. Maybe a little controlling, or maybe one of you guys would say arrogant. I don't know. It's just a little off. For me, she acts as if she's still the one in control, despite the fact that she's quite obviously about to be transported to the local jail. Okay, I'll play a portion, but she mostly just dances around how her lawyer has told her to not answer any questions, yet she believes she could answer questions because she can easily explain everything, yet she isn't going to answer questions because she knows the police will probably manipulate what she says. And then she goes on to say they will manipulate what she says because she's seen it over and over again in her profession. Okay, here's just a little bit of the dance that she does.
So I trust my attorney. He said, don't say anything. And I said, I have nothing to hide. And he's like, I know that, but just let me be there with you when we talk. So you guys seem nice people.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm trying to be difficult. This is really, if you knew all the pieces, I think you'd have a lot of empathy for what's going on.
That's really what
we're looking for. And you're an adult, and the thing about our interview, if we ask you any questions that you don't want to answer, you can just tell us, I don't want to answer that question. But we do want to have a basis and an understanding of what's going on in that home, or what went on up north that brought them into your home. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to share any of that and you don't want to answer any other questions, that's okay.
I'd like to just tell you, but I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're going to flip my words. I don't know.
And that's the good thing about cameras. Everything, it's pretty much double recorded, audio, video, and it's for the safety of for you and for us, because we don't want to flip your words. And this will all be pretty much right there to support you. So we're not going to use anything against you.
Why would be so insistent then? He's an honest, good man, goes to church. I trust him. Why would he say that to me then?
I don't know. I don't know your attorney, to be honest.
Well, I'm just saying he's a good, honest man.
Yeah,
and I'm an honest person as well, so we get along great. And he just said, do not say anything.
Maybe just as an attorney, they
always say that, huh?
They always want to be with their client. I'm not sure, but like I said, at any time, if you don't want to answer a question, you don't have to. So the ball's really in your court on what you do want to answer and what you don't. So,
well, I think it looks sad that I don't want to answer anything, but it's not because I'm trying to be difficult. I'm really hanging on what he told me to do.
Okay, the entirety of that video lasts about 6 minutes. She chooses not to talk, and as a quick note, Her honest and church-going attorney that she talks about in the portion that I played for you, that she says she gets along so well with because she's honest. Remember, those were her words. Well, she can't even remember his full name when the male detective asks her. She only knows his first name, but she knows he's honest, right? And he goes to church, and they have a great relationship because she's honest also. And maybe she's just really overwhelmed. I'm not here to make judgments on her. I'm just trying to show you guys the details of what's going on. Now, at this point, the two, Jodi and Ruby, they're arrested and transported to the jail. Ruby's video of this interaction is basically still lifeless. There's blank stares, no emotion as law enforcement cuffs her. They even ask her questions. She doesn't respond, and they move her to the vehicle that takes her to the jail. Now, Jodi's arrest is a little bit more like maybe poor me, and I don't mean that degrading. Like, she's kind of hurting. The cuffs are very uncomfortable for her since she has broader, bigger shoulders, and she can't put her arms behind her comfortably. And the other weird thing is the way that she walks is kind of haltingly, like maybe she's got some sort of physical ailment. All I know is her walking, her cadence is just not smooth. Okay, that's an overview of the videos that were released, but Ruby's personal journal entries were released also. And those revelations are so maddening, and the abuse is shocking. On a page titled Timeline, it states that her son refuses to work, that he screams, and that he has had his hair shaved off. And that's dated July 14th of 2023. Then there's a journal entry dated July 9th and then also July 10th. It's a little bit longer. In that one, she says her son turns 12 tomorrow and that she never envisioned her son turning 12 and still pooping/peeing himself. She goes on and says that satanic choices have led to one becoming destitute, even in the most influential of homes. So what she's referring to there is she's saying her son is being led by satanic behavior. And how is this even possible when he is in this super rich, fancy home of Jodi's? Okay, another portion of the journal says that her children have been in such bad deviant behavior that they won't control their bodily functions. She goes on to say that they're selfish and that their sinful lifestyle is being intervened upon. That Ruby says that she told someone that her son emulates a snake. He slithers and sneaks around looking for opportunities when no one is watching, and then he scurries. She also says if her son wants to emulate the Savior, he needs to be 100% obedient with exactness, no wavering, no hiding. Now the journal continues explaining about her daughter. In their entry, she writes that her daughter is better behaved with Jodi, but Ruby recognizes that her daughter likes to think she can still manipulate Ruby. She writes that she gave her daughter a pixie haircut, and then she notes that all her long hair is gone, that there will be no more distracting me with her hair. Now, journal entries further detail abuse the children suffered throughout the months of July and August. And days before their arrest on August 27th, in that journal entry, it states that the children were whipped. It reads, and I'm going to read it directly as it's written. I whipped him with a belt yesterday, and Eve too. She peed all over Jodi's garage floor, screamed at her, and lied to her. Then it goes on to say, she is out of control. Okay, there's more information that's available out there. If you guys want to go find it, go find it. But I think you get the idea of what kind of treatment was happening in Jodi's home. Now, it does appear by some reports that Kevin has reestablished contact with his children and that he is working to be their primary caregiver. Reports also state he is healing the rifts between him and his siblings. So hopefully, you guys, a family unit is being developed around these children. Well, that's your Monday episode of Rise in Crime. Just a quick reminder that 2 of the shows are sold out for the Murder with My Husband summer tour. So if you're wanting tickets, jump online and purchase those at onomedia.com. And if you're coming to one of those cities on the tour list, please make sure you say hi because, of course, I'll be there. And as always, please tell a friend about all the Ono Media podcasts. That's Rise in Crime, Into the Dark, and Murder with My Husband. And a big favor from me, please like and follow on my social media pages. You guys have been so great to show up in my comment sections and in the DMs. I really couldn't ask for a better audience. You can join me again on Monday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.